and I'm pleased to be asked to chair and to help to facilitate the meeting. I'd like to begin with just a very, very brief background to the path that has brought us to tonight. As you will all know, the Montreal Irish Monument Park Foundation has been working for several years to develop an appropriate memorial site associated with the stone. Try it. So a committee of Victor Boyle and Fergus Keys, Scott Phelan, Lynn Doyle, and Paul Loftus agreed to work with Hydro-Quebec and the City of Montreal when, about a year ago, or slightly over a year ago, the plans that were unfolding changed when Hydro announced that they had bought the site. So that group that I have just identified decided and that they would work with Hydro and work with the city to see how this project might go forward. I offered to be part of that group, but it was felt that my involvement could take place at a later date. So now, like you, I am excited and curious to learn of the developments that have brought us here. So just to let you know, tonight's meeting is going to have two broad parts. The 5-member group will make a presentation to us to bring us up to date on what has taken place. And this is important information for members of the Irish community, so that you can raise any issues you might have or ask questions of this group of 5. The second part of the evening has to do with the Montreal GAA. For those of you who don't know, the GAA stands for the Gaelic Athletic Association. And for those of you who may not know, in Ireland, the GAA is the cultural glue that holds the country together. It organizes sports, amateur sports, throughout the whole island. And in recent years, the GAA has spread to places like Singapore and Brazil and Australia, Canada, and elsewhere in the Irish diaspora. This group in Montreal GAA, as many of you will know, they've been attending events and coming to events for many years. But if you pick a date about 5 or 6 years ago, I think they had one team in Montreal, and now they have 17 teams. Excuse me. So I think this is very important because obviously the GAA engages with young people, and the success of the GAA will mean the vitality and the success and the future of a vibrant Irish community in Montreal. So the GAA were obviously disappointed when they heard that Hydro had bought the land, because in the original plans they had hoped they would have a GAA field on that site. So the space that was left over, we will hear tonight, it seems that it cannot accommodate a GAA field. But I'm very pleased to let you know that Victor and Fergus and the other 5 in the group have been working very hard with the City of Montreal and with the borough people to tell them about the aspirations of the GAA and to leverage the goodwill that they have with the city and the borough, so that as the GAA moves forward, they may be able to have a playing field. Indeed, they may have more than one. So as the GAA moves into this quest to get a space, because it's like having hockey teams and you've no rink. They need a space, and as they move into the effort to get that space, they'll be looking for the support and the help of the Irish community. And the GAA president is Tony Cunningham, and the executive is members of Ronan Corbett, who used to be the president as well, and Stevie Owens is on the executive as well, and some other members are here. So they will be the second part of the evening. So now let us begin with the first part, and we will learn about the developments to date with regard to the site, the memorial site for the headstone. So thank you for your attention.
Okay, so I was asked to give you a little bit of the history coming up to the development. Now, I know some of you really know the history of Donovan, so I'm going to even take a little nap. Because it's really important to understand what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. So to do that, I take you back to 1848, the mid-year of a 5-year famine in Ireland. Ireland had other famines, of course, but this was the big one, often referred to as the famine, now sometimes called the Great Hunger. Regardless of what you call it, it's estimated that 1 million people died in Ireland during this period, and 1 million people left Ireland trying to flee the hunger. Of the million that left Ireland, about 100,000, 10%, headed for what was then called the British North America. This is 1847. It's 20 years before Canada becomes a country. So at that point, it's British North America, and you got the Maritime Provinces, Lower Canada, which is now Quebec, and Upper Canada, of course, which is now Ontario. The Irish that were leaving at that time, of course, they had already lived through 2 years of famine. Many were suffering from malnutrition. A lot of them left only with clothes on their back. They really brought nothing with them, except, unfortunately, for one thing that they did bring with them, and that was what's written on the rock as ship's fever, and what today we know as typhus. Typhus is a weird disease. It certainly is very communicable. It has a very strange incubation period, and it moves quicker with some people than others. So in some cases, you could be deemed well one day and dead the next from typhus. In other cases, you could have a very slow and very terrible death over weeks. So the Irish get on the boats, 100,000 heading for British North America, and they start to die from this typhus. They die on the Atlantic Ocean. How many die, nobody knows for sure. Ship's captains who actually took the time to make a note would simply write 35 immigrants buried at sea. Sometimes a little more descriptive, they might write 30, 10 men, 10 women, 10 children. But they never wrote names. And a lot of captains never wrote anything. So how many died on the water, we don't really know. Suspect a couple of thousand anyhow. They died again in the Maritimes. And they died, of course, at Grosse Ile, which was a quarantine station just below Quebec City. That's about the only place where there are some records, and that indicates that more than 5,000 died and were buried at Grosse Ile. They continued on to die in Montreal. They went on to die in Lachine. They went on to die in Cornwall. They died in Kingston. They died in Ottawa. They died in Toronto. Going back to Montreal, fever sheds were set up in the area that we're discussing tonight, right around the Black Rock, just on the Montreal side of the Victoria Bridge. And over that long, hot summer of 1847, talk about global warming, it was probably one of the hottest summers on record. The degree over 100 degrees Fahrenheit went on for 2 or 3 weeks. The stench of the dying bodies could be smelled at the top of Mount Royal. It was a terrible, terrible event. And it rained sometimes, turned it into mud. So there the Irish lay dying, and at the end of the day, at least 6,000 died. 6,000 being an accepted number from the court case in the early 1900s that everybody agreed to accept. Many people studying it say, no, there were a lot more. Maybe 7,000, maybe 8,000, maybe 10,000. No one knows. No names were taken. So we accept and we work with the number of 6,000. So that's one part of the story. 6,000 lie dead in that and buried in that location. The other part of the story, which to us is just as fascinating and just as important, was a tremendous humanitarian effort done by Montrealers living here at the time. The effort was led by the Grey Nuns. It was a small community at that time, less than 30. 24 of them were able-bodied. The sister in charge, Mother McMillan, said to them, I release you from your vows of obedience. You do not have to go. 24 went. 24 got typhus. 7 of them died. The ones that recovered went back and worked again. Those were the Grey Nuns. As the Grey Nuns lay dying, the Sisters of Providence, another group, came in to relieve them. They also lost a number of members, and to this day, to today, every week they light a green candle in memory of 1847. This is the Sisters of Providence. The Sisters of Notre Dame also went in. I don't think that they lost any members. On March 17th, which was St. Patrick's Day of 1847, St. Patrick's Church opened, which is now St. Patrick's Basilica. So this, we're talking perhaps 4 or 5 months before the first ship starts showing up, maybe even less, 3 months or so. They have assigned something like 6 or 7 Irish priests to St. Patrick's. All of the Irish priests went to hell. All of the Irish priests except for one died. French-speaking priests coming out of Hotel Dieu Hospital also went onto the site. Now, there was a communication problem, of course, because most of the victims only spoke Irish Gaelic. Some of them spoke a little English, probably none of them spoke French. So for the French priests, they couldn't actually hear confession, but they could give last rites, absolution, and many of them caught typhus and died also. So many priests died that they had to bring reinforcements up from the state of New York to help out. The Anglican clergy was also on the scene, and the Anglican bishop went there, caught typhus, and luckily recovered, whereas a couple of the clergy weren't so lucky. There were other people other than religious there. There was the British soldiers that had been ordered to protect the sheds. And at the end of the day, many of the British soldiers went to provide help and comfort. At least one officer died. It seems like 2 enlisted men died. So a number of British soldiers also died on it. The First Nations raised some money to help out, and they brought some food in 1847. Food was a very important issue at that time, of course. There's even a record that there was some people of the Jewish community there. 1847 was about the same year that Shara Hashemayim, one of the biggest synagogues in Montreal, opened, so it must have been a pretty strong synagogue. And they say some of the people of that community also went to help. Now you got to remember that a whole bunch of people that went to help were not Irish, and many of them were not Catholic, which is quite an interesting thing. Today, we talk a lot about immigration. These people went down there, and many of them gave up their lives, not for their own people, not for their Irish people, but for sick and starving people in general. There were a number of aftermaths after that, of course. There were somewhere around 1,000 and 2,000 kids that were left as orphans. When I say orphans and I talk about orphans and adoption, of course, that only became official around 1880, the law concerning adoptions and stuff. So in 1847, it was a little vague. And in this particular case, it was really vague. And it became vague because many families were broken up on the route to Montreal. So if they stopped at Grosse Hill, sometimes the mother was taken off the boat, the father, both parents, not the kids, sometimes not the parents. Same thing happened in Montreal. Someone lay dying in the shed, the mother, the father, maybe the kids, maybe all of them, maybe none of them, just one of them. So at the end of the day, some of the orphans, and many of them spent the rest of their life trying to figure out, did their parents actually die at that time? Did they move on because they couldn't find their kids? There's some heartwarming stories where these people were put back together again, but it didn't happen all the time. Most of the orphans were adopted by the existing Irish families that were in Montreal at the time. A big group did come around 1825, and a whole gang of them were adopted by the French-speaking Catholic families of Quebec, which is how you end up with Johnsons and O'Neills and other names where their first language is French, but they have a very strong Irish name. So all to say that the project that we've worked on all these years is to honor both parties, the 6,000 Irish, to remember the 6,000 Irish immigrants, our ancestors that came and died there, but equally to remember that great humanitarian effort that was done by so many other people, not Irish, maybe not Catholic, depending. The biggest guy, of course, the most important one to be remembered is, or the one that most people remember, is the Mayor of Montreal, Mr. John Mills, who was not Irish, not Catholic, not even Canadian, really, he was born in the States. And he went in to offer them help and comfort, only to catch typhus and die himself in 1847. So all of these people we hope to remember with this project. So the AOH every year, as most of you know, on the last Sunday in May, have an official walk to the stone, and for 100 years have been trying to remember it. We just feel that it should have had bigger space, a bigger memory, because this isn't only Montreal Irish history, this is Montreal history, this Quebecois history, this is Canadian history, and indeed it's actually North American history, because many of the people who arrived in Canada at that time ended up going into the States. So that's where we stand now, and so that gives you an idea of why we want to do what we're doing. And so I guess I'm going to pass it over to Victor, who is